that a chef thing? Somebody bring it in? All right, so respecting everybody's time, I guess we can go ahead and get started. There are a few more people still coming, but they'll fall in and we'll fall in. It's interesting how many songs mention spaceships. You'd be surprised when you start looking for them. Pay attention. Okay, cool. So, how y'all feeling today, first of all? Great. All right, so welcome to the Quantum Wealth Theory Reveal. It doesn't say reveal up there, but that's what this is. This is me finally revealing to the world officially what is the Quantum Wealth Theory. So today's agenda, there are a handful of slides. The first one are some promises about our time today, what I promise to offer you, what I ask for you to promise me. We're going to talk about The Psychology of Money, a book I just read and loved. We're going to officially introduce the quantum wealth theory, and then we're going to have two activities. One is a group discussion, and then the second one is a solo activity, and then we'll conclude. In emphasizing the group discussion, this is absolutely a open floor kind of situation, so feel free to input, insert yourself, share whatever you have, whenever you have it. I will just keep going unless somebody, jumps in, so feel free to jump in. So, number one, I promise to share information that will empower you to take ownership over your financial goals with confidence. I promise to introduce some of the historical reasons on how the financial system was designed this way and to introduce some ideas for this idea of economic empowerment. And I promise to provide some of the basic tools required to help you design your unique plan and identify your actionable next steps. And so I've started to put these slides at the beginning of the few events that I've done because this topic of money is obviously a sensitive, sometimes taboo topic, and specifically the way I speak sometimes in a direct language because this is how I would have liked to have heard it for myself when I was, needing this help. And so I'm speaking that way, and I know sometimes my tone and facial expressions may not show that compassion and empathy and the soft side that needs to be had in this conversation. So I just use my words up front to say that this is a safe space. We can be vulnerable here, and knowing that we all have our different versions of this financial journey that we're on. And so with that, I ask you to promise me to make this a judgment-free zone, to be easy on yourself and others, because everybody has their blind spots. There's no change in the past, and we are not our habits. I ask you to promise me to have an open mind with some of these new ideas that are presented here. Sometimes we have old beliefs that may come up, and especially when learning new ways to engage in things that we do every day. And then lastly, I ask you to spend your attention currency when you're working to understand your financial habits and whenever you're putting that actionable plan together. And so that's what I'm asking here today, but that's definitely an ongoing effort as you go through your own process to be intentional about what you're promising to give to yourself. All right, so the psychology of money. I talked to Dominique about this on Sunday. I feel like I geeked out a little bit when I was talking about it because this book is now my new #1 favorite book to recommend, talking about the mindset around money. Garrett Gunderson's Killing Sacred Cows was my number one since 2018. So after 4 years at the top, Psychology of Money comes in to knock it off. And so a part of the Quantum Wealth Theory is a community group where we'll be having these ongoing discussions, and a part of that includes a book club. And so we'll dive deeper into this during that book club, but I did want to just highlight a few of the points that I took away from this leading up to this presentation. I feel like it was important to highlight. So the first point, people want money for happiness, freedom, and control. He introduced this idea that people want money for happiness, and understanding that happiness is a unique thing to every individual. It's hard to say that this is the right way to financial success, knowing that everybody wants a different thing with their financial success. And so understanding that happiness is different to everybody, he asked the question, okay, well, what is the common thing that people want when they say they want more money, financial success, or wealth? And he boiled it down to control. People want to have control over their lives. They want control with what they do with their time, with how they spend it, where they spend it, with who they spend it with how long they get to do that. And so ultimately, he said people want wealth for control. The second point is wealthy versus rich. He mentions that spending money is the quickest way to have less money. And so he mentioned that in the conversation of people who are rich, they're flashy. You can see their wealth because they wear it with their big house, they wear it in their fancy cars, they wear it in their attire. You can see riches easy to spot. So it's easy to say, I want that because it looks like they have what I want, which is rich what they're showing, but you're really saying you want wealth. On the other side, wealth is invisible because wealth is the money not spent. It's the opportunities that you're saving, the opportunities that you're positioning yourself now to take advantage of in the future. You can't see somebody's bank account or their brokerage statement. That's invisible. You can't see wealth, essentially, when you're looking at it. Okay, so then the third point is, and this is where he really got me. This is where it took the #1 spot officially. So who's heard the term keeping up with the Joneses? Okay, does anybody want to share what that means to them? What their interpretation of it is?
I'm actually a Jones.
Keep up with yourself.
Everyone is doing, trying to look good because other people look good, so you want to be doing, see.
Okay, so what's his name? Morgan Housel. So in this book, Psychology of Money, he puts together 20 points that talk about different psychology, ideas, positions, concepts that people have around money. So of those 20, those were great, loved it. But it was the last chapter, he called it the postscript, where he walks through the historical reasons starting at World War II on why American consumers have this relationship or idea of what they deserve with money and what rich and wealth looks like. And so the way he mapped that out was, he basically said the average American is angry or upset with the current inequality of income. So we see the 1%, we see what it looks like they live like, and then we have the rest of the average Americans, or the 99%, and we're living how we live. So he rewinds us back to World War II, when our economy, first of all, there are 16 million veterans that were overseas fighting the war. The economy as a whole, their production was focused on producing goods and materials for wartime. So companies were making guns, or I don't know what else you need for war, but a lot of the production was focused on supporting the war. So once the war ended, 16 million veterans came home. They needed jobs now all of a sudden. The companies that were booming during the war, producing what they were doing, they had to switch and start producing something else all of a sudden. And so during this time, the government passed some regulations to boost spending and boost the American economy during this time. So the corporations changed to start producing household goods. So these veterans would come home and have an assembly line job now to start producing products for the consumers to buy. So how do we allow our consumers to start buying more things now? That's when the consumer credit regulations were loosened to let regular people now have access to some goods that they wouldn't have before. And so now you got the stay-at-home moms who are looking at the Joneses stay-at-home moms down the street like, oh, she has the electric refrigerator, she has the electric lawnmower. I want the washer and dryer. I want those things. So now I'm going to use my newly minted consumer credit, go buy these things, And now I can afford to compare myself to the Joneses who are actually making $100,000 per year. Even though we're only making $30,000, I can still afford to live that lifestyle because I now have access to this new consumer credit. And so during that time, it worked because income was also increasing during that time for the vet soldiers who came home. The whole economy itself, income is increasing. An average American's income is increasing. The debt's increasing too, but at a certain point, the income level stops increasing so much. It kind of tapered off. At the same time, the debt, consumer debt, was still going up. And so fast forward that, bringing on today, when people say keeping up with the Joneses, and also you talk about wealthy versus rich, like we may see somebody who looks like they're rich because they're driving a fancy car or they have these gadgets or something that they were able to leverage with their current income and buy on credit. So it looks like we want to do that. But when you really consider what your ultimate goals are, what their debt to income ratio actually is, you might realize that keeping up with them in that way is not what you actually want. So that, for me, just to tie those, like the actual reasons behind why our psychology makes us do that. Interesting. Okay. So now we go into the quantum wealth theory. So officially, it's ready for order. We'll be shipping, well not will, it's distribution center. I uploaded the PDF file. As soon as you order it, they'll print it and ship it to you. It'll be ready for shipping as of next week. And so officially, it's a 12-step method that's designed as a weekly planner to help you identify your true desires for wealth, to recognize the value in all your different currency types, and also to design a plan that will help you get to your ideal goals of wealth that you just identified. So if I had to summarize the quantum wealth theory and what makes it different from other personal finance or budget tools out there, is because of these 4 items. The first one is economic empowerment. I use this term because for me it speaks to a level that's beyond financial literacy, because financial literacy is, saying, hey, once I learn about this loan product or get a good savings plan or stop spending, then I'm financially literate and I'm doing the action steps. But for me, economic empowerment has a more holistic approach because it's about empowering yourself to decide how you want to spend your ideal lifestyle. And I use this term wealth interchangeably with ideal lifestyle because, again, going back to what people want money for in the first place, it's not just to have digits in the bank account or paper, it's to live and feel and be free to have control of the things that I want to do. Number 2, clarity versus order. The first step is about being clear about your financial goals and understanding what actions to take. And that's because if you don't have clarity over your financial picture, you don't know exactly what your expenses are now, you don't know exactly what you want them to be in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, then it's likely that you might have worry over your finances, whether you realize it or not. If you're not clear, you may go day to day, making certain transactions, having certain ideas in mind, and realizing that if you don't have that clarity, then it might be worried that you don't know how you're going to get to these things that you want. Number 3 is everybody has unique money DNA. Similar to the psychology of money, talking about everybody wants it for a different reason, but also everybody has a different upbringing. Everybody has a different current environment. Everybody has different ideas of what they want. And so being able to define your money goals and your obstacles to those money goals is something that only you can identify because only you know what's going on. And then number 4 is the wealth mentality. This idea, I will forever credit Rob Wilson for this. He's the person who introduced me to this. The wealth mentality versus the poverty mentality. A wealth mentality is proactive, knowing that every dollar you earn can start you on the path to building wealth, versus the poverty mentality that's reactive, that thinks you don't have enough to start on your wealth journey right now. And so, for me, I feel like I took it one step further with this concept because it's not just about dollars, like your fiat currency. It's also about your other currency that you have, which is your time, your attention, your appreciation, and your focus. And so these things, as your currency, should also be spent with your end goal in mind. And so I use this last piece to transition to show you a tangible example of how this wealth mentality and using your other forms of currency can translate into value that also may not be defined in dollars. And so this is where I introduce Urban Oak and Kevin. First of all, Kevin, I admire you for not only your business moves, but how you engage with your
Let's
family.
get to the other part about yourself.
No, we want to hear it.
All right, so with that, I'll just tell you how this Kevin. So in 2017, I ruptured my Achilles tendon playing basketball. That was the catalyst moment for me that I realized I wasn't using my currency and paying using my currency with intention. I was going out every weekend. I was making enough money that I was spending probably more than I was making. So by the time my freak injury came up, I had to call off from work for a month to recover from the surgery. For me, my livelihood was threatened, my job security was threatened. I had to charge $5,000 on this medical surgery that came out of nowhere to credit because I wasn't saving, I wasn't planning, I wasn't doing anything. So that was my 2017. So at that moment, when I'm laid up at my aunt's house and my casting crutches reflected on my life, I decided, okay, I need to be more intentional with where I'm spending my time and what I want to do, because if something like this happens again, I may not have a job to come back to next time. So that was my point of focusing, and this is all in hindsight when I'm using this language to say I was focusing my attention currency. I didn't know it then, but I know it now. And so by the time I met Kevin in 2018, this is about a year later, for some reason I decided to volunteer on a Saturday night at this youth organization's 20th anniversary party. They were having a 20th anniversary, a kids club in East Atlanta. And I remember, like, before I clicked, yes, I'll volunteer. I'm like, are you really about to spend your Saturday night volunteering? But for me, knowing that ultimately I want to teach kids about money and introduce these concepts at an early age, knowing that that's what I wanted to do, I knew I needed to get more experience working with kids. So I'm like, I'm still going to do it. So I went to go do it, volunteer. I pull up to the event. I see some guy out carrying stuff. He drops what I now know is saran wrap. So I didn't know where I was going, so I just picked it up, followed him, because he seemed like he knew where he was going. Handed it to him, like, where do I sign in for volunteers? He pointed me somewhere else, so I did that. So signed in, checked in. The volunteer coordinator told me my station was laying tablecloths, so I just started laying a bunch of tablecloths. I'm dressed up, so I can have a bow tie. Instead of the anniversary party, just laying tablecloths. And then, before I finished laying the tablecloths, I guess she realized that Kevin would need help because he was the one serving all the food that night. He brought in all the food to serve for this party. And so she was like, oh yeah, you just go help serve food. And so that's how me and Kevin met. I volunteered at this event, and we were back there chopping it up, serving food all night. And so I say a lot to say because some of the advice that Kevin gave me, aside from us just starting our relationship there, I remember this very specific advice he gave me during that first conversation was that if I wanted to work with kids, knowing that my professional, I was still a financial analyst working in spreadsheets all day, but that if I wanted to work with kids, that no matter how much money I was making doing a job that was paying my bills, that if working with kids is what I ultimately wanted to do, I would be better off, or someone would be better off doing the things they love, even if it paid them a fraction of the amount. And so he told me that at the time, and it made sense. Like, okay, I see how that can work. But now looking back, like I said, in hindsight, I see that that's the quantum wealth right there. Like, no matter how much money you might be getting for something, if it's giving you that peace or that joy, then it's worth every unit of time and attention you spend doing that. And so, yeah, come on up now, Kevin. He's going to tell you a little bit about what you're doing.
Those of you who don't know, my name is Kevin McGee. I'm the chef. I'm also the executive director of an organization called Urban Oak Initiative. I'm recognized many people as the senior young men. And we work and we teach you how to cook more plant-based food with the hopes of reducing chronic illnesses like diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol. We've been doing that for about 4 years now. And so we started My grandmother started the nonprofit like 27 years ago in Missouri. And so my mother started working with it after my grandmother died, and then I picked up about 4 or 5 years ago. And I think one of the things for me, just kind of real quick, my kind of, I guess, keeping up with the Joneses, I used to try to keep up with them, you know. Then I didn't, then I did, then I didn't. Right now, I'm actually going through kind of a similar kind of, I guess I would call it financial rebirth or reformation. We're getting ready to do some new things with the organization. And as a result of that, it's required that I spend more time doing that. So some of the other things that I was doing to generate income, I'm having to kind of push those to the side and kind of pursue, you know, that love that Angel talked about. But I'm experiencing some challenges because I did not do some of the things that I should have did from a financial perspective, right? So I majored in banking and finance at Morehouse and started out in investment banking. All of my other colleagues were, I'm going to New York, I'm going to Chicago, where are you going? Like, I'm going to Atlanta, whatever, you know. So I think for me, being around people kind of causes that keeping up with the Joneses type thing, right? If you don't see somebody driving the Benz, you probably won't want one, right? You know, but I was in this environment where people were inspiring to have these things because that was sort of the status quo, what they felt they had to have. And so when I kind of, I guess, woke up and decided that, well, yo, you know, I really want to try to do things to help people, to help my people, it was a little more difficult. I'm married, I have kids. It was a little more difficult to kind of turn that boat around because I had people on it. You know what I'm saying? So you couldn't make any abrupt stops, U-turns, you know, kids might fall off, the light might fall off, you know. But I'll end it by saying this, and unless you have some questions, and I'm saying this because, like, I'm kind of in this space right now, and I think that, you know, kind of spiritual, whatever, when you're in a particular space and you're speaking and you're talking to people, it's other people that may be in that same space too, or you may prevent them from being in this space. And I think the biggest thing that I got from kind of keeping up with the Joneses, what Abe was talking about, is that whether it's a business relationship, a personal relationship, a friendly, platonic relationship, a romantic relationship, if you're dealing with someone and you have the instance to deal with finances for whatever reason, you have to have a financial alignment. You know what I'm saying? Even within yourself, right? You know, you have to be financially aligned within yourself. You know, you may say your goal is to start this business or to work with children, but, you know, you don't want to quit your job, you don't want to do this, and you have to prepare to do that. So I think, you know, what I'm going to focus on tonight from the questions that we're going to ask is really, I guess, the perspective of a person who did keep up with the Joneses and kind of made those mistakes and is now kind of, you know, trying to right that ship and turn it in a different direction. So,
Okay, so to sum up my Urban Oak experience, I wanted to bring some tangible points about the value I received from spending my time working with Kevin and ultimately Randall and his organization. So, 3 things. The business of nonprofits. Aside from learning grant writing, Kevin was instrumental in teaching me some of the basics in grant writing, some of the tricks too. We were awarded officially 3 that I had my hands directly on for a total of $150,000 of awarded grants for the organization. And so talking about free value time exchange for real dollars, like that's a very clear example of how spending your time learning something can give you value, now have grant writing experience, and also now the organization has some funds to work with. And also in terms of the business of nonprofits, for me working with Kevin, because his organization is a nonprofit, which we talked about this too at one time. The nonprofit is just the IRS designation that says at the end of the year, you can't report to us with your tax returns that you have profits. That doesn't mean that throughout the year you can't sell products, sell services, generate your revenue. You can do all that all you want because as a business you still have overhead, you still have a location, you want to pay for rent, you have salaries, you have your car expenses. You still make your revenue, pay for your expenses, and just at the end of the day, the IRS doesn't want you to report profit. And so for me, working closely with the Urban Oak Initiative, it helped me to realize that if you have a mission-based business and a nonprofit is something you think direction you might want to go in, know that you don't have to limit yourself in terms of business related to the revenue that you can earn and the type of lifestyle you can live, thinking, oh, I have a nonprofit, I have to give everything away for free. The second thing I learned was the value of professional relationships. Kevin mentioned that a little bit, but just the idea that every engagement that you have, you don't have to expect something directly from that one interaction. Like I can give 20 times, offer value 20 times, and maybe on the 21st time, that somebody else over here gives me something in return that I needed. I might not have to expect the exchange to happen directly here. So for me, the value relationship is giving, as long as it aligns with your ultimate goals. Once you decide what you want, if it aligns with you, go ahead and give freely, knowing that, you know, the karma and all that will always take care of you.
Side note, the karma giving. I'm gonna have a little piece of paper up there when we finish. Y'all can go scan it. You can give something on a cash out. $1, $2, you know what I'm saying? You know, always ask for the gift.
Yes, sir. And then the last thing I learned was execution. Specifically working with Randall. Once me and Kevin met in 2018, we had a meeting just to make sure our goals aligned, developing some programs for the kids to learn entrepreneurship and some financial literacy was how I came in. So he connected me with Randall. And so for that next year, me and Randall literally met like once a week. We had a standing weekly meeting, and we met just developing different programs, after-school programs, summer version, some worksheets. We had a conference put together, but Corona detoured that. And so during that time, working with Randall, I learned execution because we would be sitting there, you know, have the idea come up, you know, Kevin shared about his angle, what he wanted to see. You know, we could have just kept ideating or talking about the idea, but Randall just pull up her laptop, start working on it, putting it together right there. Really executing on this idea right here. So those are my main takeaways from working with her. All right. So now we get to the group discussion, group activity portion of it all. In preparing for the launch, I put together this short report that's related to the 12 different reasons why your budgeting efforts may not be working for you. I'm still finding some soft language to put around that because, you know, language matters. But essentially, that's what the goal is. And so I picked out 5 reasons for us to talk about here. So we'll just go through those 5. I'll ask Kevin about his perspective on those 5, and then I'll ask you guys if you want to share any of those as well. So reason number 1 why you might not be sticking to your budget. Because the budget feels like income. Even if you have your kinks, nobody wants to feel restricted when it comes to their financial picture and how they can enjoy their hard-earned money. So raise your hand if you've ever started a budget but fell off shortly after. Okay, so Kevin, what was it for you? What do you like about budgets and what don't you like about budgets?
I mean, budgets are good for kind of giving you an idea of where you want to be, right? So you can kind of project based on what I'm making, this is what I should be. I don't like budgets because I don't stick to them generally. You know, I think most people don't.
So what do you, if you had to identify, what do you think your reason is why you don't stick?
My wife and my 2 daughters. No, not trying to be funny. But seriously, being like 100, I think, like I said earlier, I think when you introduce like other people, whether they're a spouse, a friend, a business partner, or whatever, I think it makes it a little more different, right? Because you have somebody that's saying, oh, maybe you should get extra mustard, you know what I'm saying? Or extra pickles. Well, I might fry. Well, let's get a double order fries then. You know, it doesn't seem like a lot, right? But like, if you spend, you know, $10 and you get a double order fries, that might be an extra $2. That's 20%. You know what I'm saying? Like 20%. If you do that in several different areas, you know, it adds up really, really quickly. And I think, you know, for me, I think it's just difficult when you have other people that are kind of involved in that budgeting process. So I think, like, to the best of your ability, if you could, you know, do something that just kind of generate, like, that kind of not revolves around you, but I guess be a little more disciplined and like your own personal efforts around what you want to budget.
So does anybody else want to share some of their feelings? Okay, yeah, please.
I would say that's a great point, but also from a mental health perspective, like depression and things like that, had like caused me to like, when you go shopping or you decide to make a trip and you're not feeling so great or things are not going so well, sometimes it causes you to like stray away from your budget because it's like almost like a quick way to feel better. And so I think on a mental health perspective, that's another way to stray away from it, especially in the last 2 years. I think a lot of us this year are like, well, this year I feel like I spent more money only because I'm trying to make up for the last 2 years. Very rich.
Y'all remember like the quarantine era where you're just like buying whatever you wanted to like occupy yourself? Like that was the whole way.
Instead of distractions rolling in,
It was
I got extra to this.
in your head, I just came up on it.
I'll say for me real quick, when an opportunity presents itself and I have the money in my account, I'm pretty much gonna do it, take advantage.
So it's when you see the available access.
Yeah. And if it's not gonna, put me in a situation where I don't have any, then I'll definitely move forward and make the purchase of the trip.
For me individually, it's like this cycle that I get in. I've always been, I can admit now that I'm working on it, I have a poverty mindset just because of my childhood and where I've come from. And then growing up, especially, me and my sister, we've been the only people to move out of the state and like have our home in different states and things like that. So I remember when I first started making, and I make more money than my parents, which we all probably do at this point. But I would be like, okay, I'm gonna save. And then payday would come, and then everything that I had, and we talked about this a few days ago, everything that I had left from my previous pay, I would put into my savings. Like, yeah, you're doing a good job. And then it was like almost, it's like that fine line between, what I want to say, deprivation and moderation. So I'm thinking in my head, I'm putting all this money into my savings account. I'm doing great with no intent. Like I'm not intentionally doing it. I'm just doing it because like, I'm gonna put a few hundred in here, and then after a few days, I'm like, oh, just take a little out. Just take a little out, or I'm gonna have because I'm not budgeting correctly. I gotta take 400 of the 1,000 that I put in there, and it's this aimless cycle because I'm not intentionally investing it or saving it or anything like that. So I'm like, you gonna have to take 400 out next week anyway. Why are you even budgeting? Start again next month, and then it's a cycle over and over and over and over. So,
Thank y'all for sharing. We're gonna talk about some of those call them money triggers or money types. The emotional spending, that's one, and then the impulse buy is another one we'll talk about.
I do want to add one more.
Yeah.
Having a realistic budget.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to put away a little something for groceries and outings and whatever, but sometimes I spend too much on groceries when I'm thinking of budgeting, and it's not like you don't need $300. You know what I mean? So I'm supposed to be putting that somewhere else, or even knowing what else to budget for.
Yes. Okay. And what you're saying, knowing how in my mind it came up like tracking. Like I may say I was spending this much on groceries or outings, but at what point did I go in and check to see did I even follow, was I aligned with what I originally budgeted for?
Right, or like just realistically, looking at when you go to the grocery store, looking at how much you spend on a daily basis, making those calculations to come up with a realistic budget instead of just doing roundabout numbers.
And so in week 7, when you design your profit model, which is your income and your expenses, there's always different categories that you fill in if it applies to you or not. But specifically for things like groceries, there's a handful of categories where it's not a set amount each month. It's not like car insurance, not like car payment. So the way you get that realistic number, you go 3 months back of your bank statements. And you take a 3-month average of what you spent on groceries for the last 3 months, and you start with that number.
Okay.
And so that's, a target that you can have, like, hey, that's probably too much, or hey, that's not enough. But at least you'll know what is a realistic number based on the last 3 months that you did. And then talking about the cycle of it, that's where the same profit model comes in, because once you've gone through all those categories and you know exactly what your lifestyle expenses are today, you know what you spend on groceries, you know what your car insurance, you know what all your numbers are. So you'll know at the end of the month how much you should be able to profit. That's why it's called a profit model. At the end of that number that you have for profit, you can either use that towards some of your savings goals, you can use that towards some of your investment goals, and so you'll at least have that target number that you know you can put away, because you shouldn't have to pull out $400 from the savings next month, because in that previous month you accounted for everything already. All right, cool. Number 2, reason why you might not be sticking to your budget numbers. Now this one might seem counterintuitive, but in order to even keep you committed and motivated to your budget, you want to have some fun in it, because the budget is not about cutting out all the excess spending that you could possibly do and make your life miserable eating rice and beans only until you get your goals. Like, that's not what it's for. And so a budget, and I'm only using the word budget today because it helps, but going forward, I'll be using the term profit model, because it's just a budget, the name itself just brings chills up people's spines.
It's like a diet.
Yeah,
It's like a diet.
It's like a diet, you know, I want to eat what I want to eat. So, including funding your plans. With that profit model, you'll see your personal, so there's 3 sections. I'll give it to you real quick. The first section is the basic needs. That's your home, your insurance, your kids' expenses. These are all the things that you know every month you're gonna have to pay for, and it's not negotiable. These are your basic needs. The second column is your flexible wants. These are the things that you can flex on every month. Maybe your gym membership, maybe some of your extra streaming, maybe your spa membership, maybe your facials, you know, nails, you get done twice a month, maybe sometimes you only get it done once. Like, whatever it is, you know, these are some of the things that you might need to flex on depending on, you know, every month what you got going on. And so the point of including funding your plans, because when you design your profit model from the beginning to say, I can cover my basic needs, I can cover my flexible ones, I know I can still get my nails and hair done, I know I can still go to the movies, I can still consider these things, and then still know what I have to profit at the end. I can do all of this, still put some to my specific savings goals, still put some of my specific investments. Then you can enjoy that restaurant, dinner, and a movie, getting your nails done without having that worry or guilt, like, oh, I'm spending again. Last month I transferred out my savings. Should I really be getting my nails done? Like, you don't have to worry about that feeling because you know you plan for it. And so once you design your ideal profit model, your ideal plan, then you can move forward with a little extra motivation and confidence to actually stick to it. Like, when it comes to the end of the month and you get that text like about your girls when you go to brunch, you know, you already picked your restaurant, budget for the month. You know what I'm saying? We got it. No, we don't.
Or you can send a text in the group text. Sorry, I reached my budget already.
See, we got good friends though, you know what, girl, we got.
I got you, right?
I get mine,
Shoot the warning text beforehand.
Yeah.
In about 2 weeks, you about to get that.
So we're much better. Alright, so you did include funding your plans. Kevin?
I don't really have much on this one.
No? You never had to cut something out that you just
I mean, I have, but I think, you know, I added it back in. I think somebody else, chef over there said, you know, like, you know, something happens. Well, again, my situation, it's not unique, but it's a little different, right? I have a family, so somebody needs dance lessons. No! I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of, you know, you want to make sure that you keep your kids or whoever actively engaged, right? So they don't end up, you know, with some antisocial behavior, but, you know, at the same time, you have to kind of balance, you know, they need to, my youngest had a sweet 16 party, right? No.
It's like a wedding.
Your youngest is now 16.
I'm gonna share with y'all, this is real transparent. Okay. So, we were talking about the party, I said, well, hey, we need to set a budget. How much do you think it's gonna be? Well, I mean, it's gonna be this and this is, I get that. You know, what you think, well, I mean, I was thinking about, whatever, thousand. Like, how much is that? How much is the place? How much?
Right.
Well, it's gone,
Yeah.
it's gone up since my oldest daughter had, it's gone up since Kayla had hers, and I get inflation, and the spiders went up a little bit. I said, well, look, how about we do this? And I said, look, because it was getting all emotional, right? I was like, at this point, it's not even working, right? You know what I'm saying? So I was sort of like, I said, well, look, how about we offer my daughter? I said, well, look, she can either have the party at this amount, or she can pick amount she wants to have out in the balance. We just give it to her. She can put it in a bank account, she can put it in a savings account, she can do whatever she wants to do with it, right? So, because there's no amount too much to invest in your children or the people that you love. You dig? You know what I'm saying? Right? Exactly. So, there's no amount, but you don't have to spend it all at the party. You know what I'm saying? You can have like a $1,500 party and then take the other $2,000 and do, whatever you want to do. Long story short, the latter didn't work, you know what I'm saying? So they had the party, you know what I'm saying? And it was cool, and she deserved it, and I kind of thought about it. I was like, well, during COVID, she didn't go to any kind of proms or dances at school or no kind of social interaction. There was nothing for like 2 years. So I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better, about it now. But I think, in terms of the fun piece, I think it is important to include fun in the budget, but I don't think, as far as that's never been my problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think my problem has been kind of identifying what is fun versus, what's really going to bring me, like, let's say, long-term joy and excitement. You know what I'm saying? Like, fun is, we had drinks over across the street. I got drunk, I had a really good time, but there was really no value in exchange after that. Versus, if I took that same money, maybe I bought a new set of knives or something for $100. You know what I'm saying? And I got some enjoyment out of it that may have, went a little bit further than that. So I think that's the way that I try to approach it, as I've gotten, a little more mature around money is, okay, I'm going to spend the money, but I'm going to spend it on something that's going to bring me value, I can use, more often, and not so much on, kind of more, traditional.
Thank you for that. What that's saying to me is there's short-term fun versus long-term enjoyment. Okay, anybody else want to share? Go ahead.
I was gonna just kind of piggyback on that. When it comes to like traveling, like to me, I don't really care about buying expensive shoes, or expensive cars or expensive purses. I don't care about name brand, but I will spend on experiences. Like I will go travel, I will take my kids with me, because that to me is so valuable. And I can probably do that better, like budgeting in a better way to where I can actually plan long term. To me, that's always more fulfilling, and I think that's where most of my money goes. It's just like going, like traveling and having my kids experience it with me. So, but I definitely get better at that. Just like putting money to the side properly.
Experiencing, I'm like,
Okay.
yeah, it's important to provide those experiences for your kids too. I don't even think about the money when I'm planning a trip.
Right.
And bringing kids along. They're adults now, but thinking back.
So talking about the planning for it and the quantum wealth of it, like I agree with you. I'm the same way. Paying for experiences is something that you can't put a number on except when you need to plan it and pay for it. But those experiences are like truly invaluable. And so when you talk about planning for it in your profit model, we'll work through the first part of the exercise, which is designing that 5-year, that's the second activity today, designing that 5-year vision for yourself. And so for you, if your priority is traveling with your kids, maybe it looks like once a quarter, we want to travel to these places. So in 5 years, if once a quarter travel what we want, we'll put the budget, okay, that's going to be this for plane tickets, this for hotels, this for the excursions. You know how much it's going to cost you all year long, and then you just reverse engineer to say, okay, if I'm going to be planning for that, then every month I'm going to put $200, or $400 away in my travel savings account. Because we're gonna get OD with, like, we have our checking that the money comes into, and then for whatever savings targets we identify, we're not saving just for fuck's sake in a rainy day. We're saving for very specific reasons. So we're gonna have one saving account for travel, one saving, well, first the emergency fund, you know, depending on your risk tolerance, probably you want to just have some liquid reserves. That's the first savings account. But for every other target you identify, there's travel, there's house down payment, car down payment, you know, party, whatever. And so you just put money into those separate accounts every month. So by the time that event hits, you just pull it out, and there you go. And that's where the plan comes. All right, so who else has ever given up some fun or passed up some fun?
Yeah. I didn't really plan for fun. I don't really plan for fun. That sounds really like sad, but I don't. I have a yellow spirit, and I used to be in aviation, so it used to be really inexpensive and efficient to just go have fun. Because I'm also not materialistic. I like experiences. So now I'm not in aviation. I don't really plan for fun. But Auntie inspired me. Talking about keep sweating.
Oh, New Edition.
New Edition. But it was a conversation that we had, and I think you're just talking about the experience of it, and seeing it in your lifetime. And I just thought like some of the musicians that I like, and it's like, that would be a great story to know that I've experienced that. So recently I bought some tickets, and it was me playing it for fun. And it's like, okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, I don't plan for fun, but I've added it to the budget, and now I'm like, it's weird.
So for you think, is it because you're fun, you just like that YOLO,
Yeah, fun for me is going to the park. It's just, or like being in Bali. It's like extreme. And I don't really, I plan for Bali sometimes now at least, because don't have the Delta Phillies. But, so fun for me is just, it can be really, it's not a budget. I can be sitting and reading a book and that can be fun. Yeah, so I don't know, it's cheesy stuff like that. But recently I was kind of taught to kind of plan for fun, my desire to, buy clothes. I don't know, I'm not a consumer like that, so, making space for that, is a new thing. It's kind of cool.
Here's the things. Okay, cool. What else? All right, cool. Reason number 3 why your budgeting efforts may not be working for you is because you don't actually believe that financial success is possible for you. All right, so I'll start with you, Kevin. When you think of being wealthy or financially successful or whatever that means to you today, have you ever had one of those pessimistic thoughts that pop up and make you feel like you may never experience it?
Yeah, I think for me it was, they don't occur often, but they occur often over my life. Typically, for me personally, they occurred when I've been surrounded by other people who've had a lot of different things, right? I mentioned earlier, kind of went to, Morehouse. I don't know if you know about Morehouse, but some brothers could be a little bit, persnickety, what I'm saying? I've never worked 4 years, but there is an atmosphere around there, right? You're supposed to drive a certain thing, you're supposed to, wear a certain type of suit, shoes, etc., whatever. But I think for me it has been, thinking that the people that I was around, that I needed to have the same thing that they did. And being honest, it's really difficult to be around, quote unquote, people or in situations or environments where other people have a lot of things or a lot of what appears to be riches, right? You don't know what they're doing, right? But it appears to be, and you're like, yeah, I'm on my budget, but wow, they got like 500 series over there. You know what I'm saying? I gotta have can I put the roll in the blue? You probably kind of ask yourself, like, what am I working for? You know what I'm saying? But then you see the person in the 600, right? And their willow's been cracked for like 2 years. You know what I'm saying? Because they can't afford to get paid for, right? Because it costs a lot. But I think for me, that used to be, the situation was because I was surrounded by other people. So I was like, well, I'm never gonna get on that. Well, how did they get it? I'm all in my head like, well, how did they? Well, how are they? And why are they? And how do they kids and this and the other? But interesting story. So recently, like I said earlier, I'm from a small town in the Midwest, it's an agricultural town. It's only like 2,000 people. It's like in the middle of nowhere. And literally, you could walk into the store, dirty from head to toe, nobody would even look up because everybody's farmers. You know what I'm saying? I could wear the same thing every day, walk around barefoot. Nobody would even blink up and hey. They call me my nickname. Hey, right? They call me my nickname and keep on going. And so I've been going at it a little bit more often over the last, couple of months during COVID. And so when I would come to Atlanta, I'd be like, well, this, I got my things on. I got to go through all of this stuff just to go to the store. You know what I'm saying? Or not come to this event, but go to an event. If I'm a chef, you know what I'm saying? I'm going with other chefs. I need to have, some nice chef shoes. I gotta have a jacket. I gotta have some Sharpies. I got, you know what I'm saying? All this type of stuff. And I was sitting there looking, and I was like, wow, I spend a lot of money and a lot of time, which is money, doing things just so you can be in a place, right? But it really shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter what you do, right? But it does, right? But it does. You know what I'm saying? Like depending on what industry you're in, or what you have to kind of communicate. You got to communicate to people kind of what you're doing. So I think for me, what I've done in terms of kind of making it more, I guess, possible for me recently, I've sort of decided, like after my youngest daughter leaves in a couple of years, like I'm done kind of with the whole kind of keeping up with the Joneses type of thing. Like, I was like, I may low-key like leave Atlanta, move to the country, buy a house for $15,000, and then I'll just fly in Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? Like when I need to do something, because literally, like I can spend $2,000 and be one of the richest people in this little town. Like facts. Like I have a house, I have 20 lots, and I can fly to Atlanta every week, and that still be like $3,000.
Cheaper than that.
It'd be cheaper than actually living in Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? Because Atlanta, it's getting increasingly more expensive, right? And particularly if you want to live, not saying so in the country, there are no bad neighborhoods. It's just country.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? There are no bad neighborhoods. But in Atlanta, if you want to stay somewhere reasonably safe, you got to spend some money. You know what I'm saying? Like even if you're in a gentrified area, you're gonna spend, $200,000, $300,000 easy, on the flip, So I was just kind of like, wow, for a moment I was like, wow, I'm able to make it. I was like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna make it, but it may not be in Atlanta for me to be financially successful. I might have to make $500,000, right? Have a house, car, this, that, and the other. For me to be successful in my little small town, $50,000, a couple ATVs, a four-wheeler, and I'm the richest man in town. So.
Really? Oh, go ahead.
For me, what contributes to that thought of scarcity is when I dabble off of my my career path, like my chosen purpose, and then I start getting into learning about real estate, learning about cryptocurrency, trying to figure out how to get this NFT down. I dabble so much in other businesses that, first of all, the cap in my mind increases astronomically, and then all of a sudden I feel like I'm the size of a penny. That's a good one,
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one again? I didn't catch that.
Meaning that my glass ceiling, it just breaks open, and then my knowledge of how much I can actually make if I just do this thing in these series of events,
This thing is outside of what I say I want to do.
right, and I start putting my energy into that, and then my manifesting power, it starts spreading this way instead of going this way. It's very frustrating.
I found myself in very interesting spaces, and one interesting moment I had was with a group of women, and the conversation was more about all of these people, when I tell you wealthy, like pools in the backyard, older, and hearing them talk about their relationship with money and how it correlates to freedom. I feel like a lot of times in rooms, the biggest systematic flaw within underrepresented groups, specifically blacks, is the systems that have been put in place for us to think that we're smaller than a penny. And when you empower yourself in rooms such as this, where you're talking about, well, people who are vulnerable enough to share, you'll find that people who actually have money want to share. It's not this whole bag of like, oh, well, I have this and why are me? Find sometimes that wealthy mindset will bring you to yourself and you'll feel alone. And all of a sudden you'll attract people who are on this path. Like I have no idea how I had a seat in that room other than I was like, by the time I'm 40, I'm gonna be wealthier than anything we have. Happy, wealthy, and healthy. Or like that's my mantra every morning. And amazing people have come into that room. And sometimes it's like leaving where you think you should be and the people that you might have around you and allowing yourself to see yourself bigger and better. And you'll find yourself like, how did I get in here? You almost teleport yourself, but it starts with that mental, what is your relationship with money? Why do you have that relationship? Where did that come from? And then if you say to yourself, does it serve me or not?
That's the question right there. Does that
That's
serve me or not?
If it doesn't serve you anymore, then release. Identify it, pray on it, and move on. And watch where you elevate to. That's the first part. And I see it every day. I've seen people with dreams come into my dreams. Everyday people like that.
I'm gonna actually like really piggyback on that really hard because I come from the projects, I come from a poor family, I migrated to the U.S. So my mindset is I don't ever feel like I'm not gonna succeed. Like, and I don't know where it comes from, but kind of what you just talked about, like imagining it myself. Like I never think that I'm not gonna make it because in my head I'm like I'm gonna do it, and I find myself like in different rooms and like just because in my head I'm like I'm gonna make it. I don't know how, but I'm gonna do it. It's just this like mentality of you're meant to be greater no matter what. And that really resonated with me. So thank you for sharing it. But oftentimes I'm like, I don't know how I got here, but I got here. And it's just knowing that you're gonna be great regardless. So but I feel like this is really important too.
So,
To sum it all up, definitely deprogramming. That's what I've been mostly doing, deprogramming my subconscious. So I can track all the money that I have, and this ain't in my bank account yet. I also stopped saying that I'm spending money or I spend money, and I started saying I'm circulating money. So lately I've been circulating money.
circulating is like the current of water energy. It has to flow to produce that energy.
Right.
If it's stagnant, it's not doing that for you.
Right.
Man, so you talked about the systems put in place, talked about the mindset coming from migrating to America, and then you talked about, Jody, about the deprogramming first. Like, that's literally what it is. Like, at the beginning, we talked about how general American history tells us why we feel like we do with the Joneses, but here in this room, we can talk about the experience with Black America and why we have some of those additional programming or conditionings that we have that make us feel like, I may not see tomorrow or see next year, so why am I going to save and plan for that future when my tomorrow is not promised? And so when you talk about some of these generational habits or ideas that are passed down, these beliefs that can be passed down through word or action, but sometimes that it's also passed through DNA, like inherited through actual DNA. So we talk about reprogramming, like it's very essential to reprogram in whatever method works for you. Like maybe you want to listen to some binaural beats or meditation tracks that you recorded for yourself, some affirmation tracks, or just reading something over and over, or reading different perspectives to help you see outside of the current program, paradigm, mindset, lens that you currently have, because your current lens is based off of your existing environment, your past experiences, and all these things that make up who you are. It's beautiful in some ways, but in some ways, if you don't recognize that it is a box and a lens, a specific lens, we might not recognize that we need to go find some other programming to install. So in the quantum world theory, there's a deep program, that's the first chapter. Is understanding your default program. That's what it's called, default program. Once you understand that, then chapter 3 is about your program update. So that's, we'll talk about the analogy at the end, but yes. And we've been told a lot of, been taught, told, and experienced a lot of things that have us needing to have this conversation. And the places where they do have these conversations, oftentimes not in rooms for us, but in the
I have a question. So like, I'll say for me, part of my challenge has been like, and I'm not blaming anybody, like observing like some of the financial habits of my parents, like as I've grown up, and kind of their mentality, you know, in terms of, you know, my mother always wanted to have nice things and be successful. She is successful. She had nice things. She couldn't necessarily afford nice things, but she wanted to have nice things, you know. And so I think sometimes we kind of unknowingly adopt habits like our parents. So I'm just kind of curious, like, does anybody have or want to share like any habits, you know, positive, less than positive, that they may have picked up from their parents and how it's kind of affected?
Definitely the non-fun. I get that from my dad. And my dad was very frugal. Yeah, so I mimicked him on that.
I'll say my parents are like full opposite when money. My dad's very frugal. My mom's a spender, a giver. So I find myself sometimes either in extreme. Either I'm so scared of my bed, or I'm just living my best life. I can't really find a balance. Yeah. Right.
The same. Like my parents, my mom, like was organized, the sales spreadsheet, everything. It's like okay. My dad though, totally like reckless with money. You know, he depends on his wife to really like have the credit.
Yeah.
Okay, so my dad married a nominal name woman named Becky, and like I so yeah, and she gets better credit opportunities. And I'm like, how do you get better credit opportunities? Like you guys both have to file bankruptcy. I'm like, I've seen this, but like she gets more credit opportunities than he does. And so I think that's something too, because I think that probably should have something to play with that. So she gets a lot more like monetary opportunities than he does. You know, he has to go out there and work, but he'll be spending. You know, as a kid growing up with bowls or going to bowling tournaments, he really had the money, but we always went. Like it was an experience. You know, but at the same time, I saw the struggle. Like I remember when he went through bankruptcy, and like he couldn't get things, but he would still make it happen, even though he's totally broke. And like I picked up some of those habits myself. I would spend, probably get down to my last $1 and I'll be like, well, it'll come back, especially when I was serving. I'm like, I'll make that money back the next day. You know, that's definitely the work.
The cat dog.
Yeah. Now that I'm a parent, like I'm more responsible for sure. Because I have 2 sons and we got to plan for things and we have to budget, you know, but at the same time I see myself with my dad's habits again because I have a husband. So he's a breadwinner, so I'm not as responsible with money. Like, even though I don't have to pay as much income in the household, I'm still not saving like I should be. You know, because like I want to live. I still got some of those old habits, so it's a new program that I have to work towards. You know?
I agree with that. Like my parents both dentists, so but they never had like a financial literacy course. So they would just kind of live, but then I also saw how money could be one way, and then you have student loans, you have all these things. All they taught me was have a bank account, which I learned on my own that doesn't serve me. If anything, it puts me in the hole to have a bank account. But close to that, the one thing that sits with me is when I think about the systems again, my parents aren't too far away from slavery. So it's just like that's the best that they knew at that time, is what legacy you want to push for.
My mom, she racked up like credit card debt. Like when we moved to the States, like back in the 90s, the early 90s, you know, they were passing out credit cards like candy. So she had like 10 plus credit cards and we spending. And we lived in the project, so just no financial literacy at all. And I'll be honest, I had a when I got older, I didn't own a credit card, y'all. I was terrified of credit cards for a long, long time. She had to like file bankruptcy, and I'm so disappointed because it was right before I left for high school. I think I had just graduated, and just to find out that she had filed bankruptcy like really bothered me because I'm like, man, like what were you doing? Why are you living like this? Like who files bankruptcy? So it was really difficult for me to like have to see my mom still living in the projects and have to file bankruptcy. Like you should never, like rent is 5 something. You shouldn't have to file for bankruptcy. So that had like a hold on me, like not wanting to get any credit cards. So like, and you know, credit cards is a way to kind of like you can play around with it to make you know, financially like better off. Like it's just a game. I use credit cards, but I wouldn't get one for a long time.
I think, to the point of this reason and a little bit of, or what Tony said, being however many generations outside of slavery, when we talk about or define financial success, maybe there's like an inherent disbelief, simply because when we think of financial success, we picture it as that rich, which looks like the objects that we have, and it's not that long-term plan. You know, even Tony mentioning having the house and, you know, having that American dream. I mean, there was a picture, but that wasn't really wealth, and that wasn't really financial success. So I think maybe, because I wouldn't say that I didn't believe it, but I guess from what I was taught and what I was modeling in my life, I never, you know, patterned my life to actually have it either. So maybe I didn't know it was, maybe I didn't know it was possible because I didn't know what it was.
Or you didn't know what it looked like. Because I wrote down financial success looks differently on everybody. And to get back to piggyback, what's your name? Nadia, to get with her as far as like, and what Chef Kev was saying, my mother, I mean, we grew up in the hood, but she married my father, so we went to the suburbs, He was pretty frugal, but he wasn't because all his money went to her. But she had 3 it was 3 of us, so he married her, 3 kids and all that. He was super amazing father, but when she did get the money, and I remember we used every second Friday she would get paid and we would have lobster. We would sit in the middle of the living room and have lobster because that was payday. Yeah. So that was just one way she showed, that's the only way she could show at the moment, like that's all she had to give at that time. You know what I mean? Outside of the roof over her head. So
with this money, luxury?
Excuse me?
She was trying to show you luxuries?
To an extent, yes. And then when she got, it sounds horrible, but when she got his income also, they lived together, they were married, all this other stuff. It was very material with her, very material. She enjoyed that. That was her access. That was her love language, gifts and all that. So she also gave that to us. And I don't want to say in exchange for love or her presence and all that other stuff, but how she enjoyed showing her that she loved, that they loved her. She would do that in turn with me and my sisters. And I remember, you know, we were in a cohort together, so we talked to the financial therapist, read me, and I was like, I'm not doing that, you know, I don't plan for fun either. I don't. Like, I've had the same clothes for like 7-8 years. I don't care because I rather, you know, enjoy life. I have a 7-year-old, so I rather enjoy life experiences with her. We go to Piedmont, you know, $15 on some dinner, some bubbles, like she good, I'm good. Like I don't need, but she said, but I don't need all of that. But then the financial therapist was like, well, 2 things, and I already knew this, like it's kind of that poverty mindset where it's like, I didn't grow up with a lot, and the little bit that I got on my own and I earned, I'm going to keep it, especially with my daughter. I'm going to hold on to all of it. And then it was like, for me, that's what I thought financial success looked like to me. For 3 or 4 years, I lived off of 40% of my income. I saved as much as I could. I hoarded, should I say, as much as I could. I didn't intentionally budget. I was just sitting on money. I'm like, oh, you know, all this other stuff. And then she was like, well, that's all right, but at the same time, you're conditioning your daughter now because you're so worried about running away from, you know, trying to not be like your mother, that you're kind of letting your daughter know, hey, in this sense, don't budget for fun. You don't use anything, like you basically are depriving yourself. And she sees that, and you're unconsciously conditioning her to do the same thing. And again, it's almost like a diet, whether it's food or money. The second you deprive yourself, I mean, we stress, the second you deprive yourself of something is the second you want it the most. So when you budget and that money is not accessible, it's like, no, let me transfer it back real quick. Or you know what, I'm gonna start a budget next week. Or I'm gonna start the budget. It's just the same thing like a diet, which is basically what a budget is, or you know what I mean? Yeah, so it's just, it's a cycle. Again, you have to deprogram yourself, because for 33 years, 30 years, that's why, I didn't even realize. And I'm sitting here, I'm being good, I'm saving, we're doing this. And then my daughter's looking at me like, oh, you don't spend money, you don't have fun, you don't do this, you don't do that. And it's, again, a mindset of poverty, or it's a poverty mindset, because I don't want her, which I do, go into the store looking at how much something is all the time. Or she's like, Mommy, it costs this much, can I get it? And I'm like, damn. Like, I don't want her to worry about that. You know what I mean? So it's a whole, I could speak for 20 more minutes, but it's just a whole cycle of like mindset and all that other stuff. But yeah.
You said earlier, you talked about he said a lot of it is control. I think it's more so security, right? I think oftentimes we just want to have security and knowing so you don't have to worry about going into the store and seeing what the price is, because we are comfortable enough to know that we can bring it over to get it. I think security is a lot of, it just allows you to relax. You are secure and you know that. I mean, I guess control is security. It's interchangeable words.
Right. No, I see what you're saying. So I want to share with y'all, talking about some of what we learned from our environments. For me, and Kevin, you started by saying I don't want to blame nobody, and then you started to describe what your mom did and how I don't want to blame anybody, but when I reflect on how I watched my mom deal with her relationship with money, I realized that that's some of the things that I definitely had to deprogram. So for me, believing financial success is not possible, I know that was one of mine, because I would hear my mom say, oh, there's always going to be some bills to pay, or we can't afford that, or we won't, like these very definitive statements that saying we can't afford this. That was part of my early reprogramming, was to say, instead of saying we can't afford it, to say that's not my priority right now. Like, it's not that I can't afford it, it's just that I choose to not do that right now. And so, I still thank my mom, because if it wasn't for that poverty mentality that I witnessed and watched, and we had our own, I'll share that story at another time, but as a kid, I became a money hoarder early on because of how I saw her acting, whether I knew it or not. And so we got to a time where she had to borrow my money as a 10-year-old, and I say borrow because she just took it and then didn't pay back just for the light bill. But I was, understanding at the time, because the lights had to get paid. But now looking back, for me, I realized that led me to believe, maybe feel insecure with money, because I felt like no matter how much I made, earned, saved, somebody was off the outside force was always going to come and have power over my financial circumstances. So that's my mind.
So pretty much breaking the generational curse. That's what we're doing with breaking the
Oh,
generational
absolutely.
And that they might continue, even if you get into a different space, because you still have to continue to learn. Like, okay, now that I do have money, do I want to give it too much? To build, it's like finding that balance, like you said, that control and that security, they do go hand in hand. And my mom actually does this thing where, first of all, she's secretive. I don't like it. We don't know what Michelle really makes. You still don't know. I still don't know to this day what she makes. But she does this thing where she purchases things that she doesn't have in business purchasing.
I know you too.
But they're actually good things. Like, she'll watch this seminar or something like that, and then she'll end up purchasing the seminar package. But then she doesn't use the seminar package or know how to return her money. She'll put $500 in a coin because they just said it was going up.
Yeah.
That's not a good money habit. Like, she'll end up losing that money over time. The coin's not going anywhere. She'll rack my brain and help me, like, pressing and figure out how to get the money out. Like she just doesn't. She'll purchase land, but then like don't know about all the other land fees. So now she's like, she got rent to pay on the land. Like, wow, what you doing paying rent on land? Like,
Did she grow up with little? Did she come from?
So she's not from America. Like my mom's from Guyana, so she came to the United States and like America's like, oh my God, this is awesome.
Do you think she's living out the American dream that she came here for? Not being intentional with her habits and how financial freedom looks, because it's the same as a rapper gets signed to a label. They haven't had that money before, but it's like, oh, I have access to these things, so I'm just gonna. Because my mother, it ain't no land, she ain't buying no land or nothing like that, but she'll buy some clothes and like just the stupid stuff she don't need, like shit she just don't need. But it's just like I know my mother, she came from nothing, so now that she has that, she can control that. Whether it's buying stupid stuff, when I tell you thousands of dollars,
it's like I feel like I inherited that bad money habit because I'm smart, I can skim things and get the gist of it and get away with it. But I don't go to step 1, step 2, step 3, and then now you can get this 4, 5, 6. Okay, now it's time to buy this.
You know, like premature money, maybe.
Right, yes. Prematurely like investing or sowing premature seeds and not really having the know-how to actually water this type of plant. Like some plants are meant for shade, some plants you can't really water it that much. I feel like money is the same. Okay.
I think that's cool that you say that, because everyone's path is gonna be different. Every person I've heard I have one friend, he just so happened, his mom had these properties, and he was like, oh, I have this knowledge, I can figure this out. Now he's managing like a $1.2 million portfolio for his mom, because she saw it. So it's like his entrance to wealth wasn't something he actually planned, but he received the opportunity and the knowledge that he got from literally online, listening to podcasts and stuff like that. So it's, when we watch Instagram and people's wealth journey, sometimes it's not that step 1, 2, 3, 4. You just have to start literally, what is your relationship with money? How does it serve you or not? And then position yourself, like get as much knowledge as you can, but also realize, like, stay a little bit durable and malleable, because God's purpose isn't the same for us, because we all have money right now. So it's just like stay open. You might have to deviate a little bit, but stay creative. Like, don't lose that. Like, you're so, and knowing you, I'm like, the music and
now I gotta find a lot of these.
You know, like, doing research,
That's a blessing. It's a blessing.
I mean, yeah,
something to do.
I'm excited about it, but it's just like,
You sound excited.
That's so exciting.
yeah.
Oh, wait, went to the next one already.
Yeah, my bad.
Did I cook it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody else wants it.
Okay, cool. So, reason number 4, this is where we get back to, we mentioned it a couple times. So reason number 4, why you might not be sticking to your budget plans because you haven't figured out your personal money style or some of your spending triggers. So in week 9 of the Quantum Wealth Theory, we identify some of those money styles and some of your different habits that you may have when dealing with money, dealing with your emotions, dealing with your day-to-day. And that's one of my favorite chapters, because at the end, the exercise, each chapter has the content you read and then the exercise or the action steps to follow through. So that was one of my favorite, because the action steps is to like identify your personal commandments, your personal spending commandments. So after going through the exercise and realizing like what your natural habits are, style, then you go through like, okay, this is the way I'm going to follow for myself. Side note. But here, Kevin, for any of these 4 money styles, would you recognize or resonate with any of those?
I think probably a lot of them on different levels. I think my biggest one is probably like a combination. Like I don't really, like a lot of people said, I don't really buy, expensive shoes, designer clothes. But but I will buy, expensive chef jacket or some knives. If I'm going to a competition, I need to have, a brand new Game Rose. I need this, I need that. I would, whatever line of business or endeavor I'm involved in, I've always wanted to have like the best of whatever was supposed to be in that particular endeavor. You know what I'm saying? So if I was doing photography, I gotta have the EOS 85,000. What's the best out there, right? And that's something I got from my mother, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, right? Because you want stuff that's quality, but as an amateur photographer, do I really need, like, I bought one, I did buy a camera like that one time, and I was like, I have no earthly idea on how to use any of these settings. Give me the iPhone. I sent it back, fortunately, but that's probably been my biggest one. Whatever I've done, I've always wanted to get the best. When I started my first restaurant, we gotta have brand new equipment. I don't want nothing used, and I rationalize, right? But if I get it new, it has warranty. Right. But now, yeah, right, that's good. It's good, right? But now I've been in the business for a while. It's gonna work for 20, 30 years in commercial. You know what I'm saying? So I think, just having a better understanding of what I really want to do. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think, and letting that kind of guide, my triggers were like, is my goal to have, a restaurant with brand new equipment and shiny things, or is it to feed people and make money and then do other things, right? What's the minimum that I need to do those things?
Okay, so I'm gonna share real quick. So you got impulse buy. For me, that's like internet ads. I see something like Kevin said, and also now I'm calling this out. I'm a gadget person, so if I feel like there's anything that will make my life easier or something, like I'm quick to buy something like that. And so impulse buy, number one. Number two, emotional spending. You're talking about the retail therapies. Number three, money hoarding. Because like Tisha said, we've been taught to save, I need to save my money, but like Jody said, currency has to be spent sometimes to accomplish the goals you want. You can't just hold your money and feel like you're going to have these experiences. You have to spend, but the point is making sure you're spending in the right place. And then number four is the constant money worry. Going back to having clarity over your financial plans versus worrying about what you don't know. That worried energy depletes you sometimes, and depletes all that motivation you might have had to follow through, or taking that extra 2 hours on a Saturday to go pull your 3 months of bank statements to just see what your trends are looking like these days. And so, does anybody else want to share some of their money triggers? Oh, look, that's one too. Spending money for love. In chapter 9, we talk about it. Sometimes people like gifts as love language. If you feel like you got that.
Maybe you just take that one off. That one is really bad.
Get out of there. You got it right.
Has everybody read the book, The 5 Love Languages?
Yes. So when you talk about gifts for love language, sometimes you fucked up a conversation, you feel like you gotta apologize. And instead of having that tough conversation, someone like, should I go buy a bag or something? I don't know how that works, but so when you say relationship, what were you thinking?
I mean, I buy a lot of flowers, man. Jody like, yeah, me too, man.
I'm always a dog now, so.
They don't even take care of it. They just die about 3 days later.
There's a lot of people in the conversation. That's a decent purchase.
Food is better. Food
Yeah,
is better all the time.
And they
Food
don't
over
work
flowers.
Yeah.
Tacos.
See, food is more expensive though. We can count on that orchid being $5.99.
I think, I'm sorry.
I was just saying, a lot of looking back, reflecting, because I'm a tourist, so I'm I love to eat, so I know the journey of my money in my lifetime.
Tired life.
Oh, my money was.
I think I'm definitely a
Yeah, so I'm not a hoarder, which is ironic. I got a reading up, and I was bred to, they revealed my habit is to pay off things too much. So it's like I get, like I'm good and I'm managing, but if I get like a lump sum, then I like pay everything off. And that's just not smart.
It's not.
So
No,
it's not, no, not necessarily. It depends on the, it is.
Right.
Yeah. So I just, and then I'll be in a place where now I don't have any things, so then I'm back into a place of worry. So it's more so like planning, having the fun, emergency fund, et cetera. And then also, so that's just me, but I think, the relationship thing, I was tripping a lot. And it's wild because I don't spend money on myself, but if somebody asks me for something, then I would, especially my lover at the time, I would probably buy it. And, that was just, I'm a giver, yeah, I'm really generous to my partners. So, but that wouldn't be emotional or anything. I was good, I could do it. But then sometimes the worry overextending.
Like, after.
Certain things are like overextending and be like, oh, I should have probably not done too much.
I want to add something I don't think we talked about. The whole social media scene has caused us to, I think, watch people's highlights and see all of people go on these great trips or, nice cars, and you see so much of people doing so well. No matter how mentally strong you are and know that that's just the highlight of their life, it can kind of sometimes impact you. Like for me, I try not to let that affect the way I look at where I am and my success and where I'm going. But oftentimes, I have to scroll through it real fast because I'm like, I know if I sit there and look at this, especially a woman my age doing well, it can kind of impact you, I'm not where I'm supposed to be at. It does something to your psyche. So I have to be real careful what I'm taking into my mind as well. And then living here in Atlanta, listen, I live in a lot of cities, all right? But something about Atlanta is a great thing, and it can also impact you negatively because you go out and it's sometimes you're like, man, am I doing good enough? Because everybody my age or younger is doing, they're dressed from head to toe, the designer, nice cars, beautiful homes, and then it makes you question yourself, what am I doing wrong? Am I not at that level? But then I have to bring myself back and no, I don't know what's going on in their financial situation. It's all, a facade.
I was about to say, not even finances.
Yeah.
I've had,
they could be living with 3 other people.
or they're not. I've had clients worth millions and millions and millions, and I go to cook for them or something. The house is literally, not physically, literally, but their house is a mess. They're unhappy. Their husband got 2 or 3 girls. You know what I mean? Just a whole mess. And so I think it's a double-edged sword because we see all that stuff, but being in the rooms, like you said, also these people are human. They wipe their ass the same way we do. You know what I mean? And it's just it's this facade, but once you kind of, whether you sit at the table or you're serving, I like to serve people. So I don't, again, financial success don't look like that for me. She can have all that stuff because I know what else comes with that for most people. Once the posts are gone and they out the club, they still don't, some of them going home with their 3-4 roommates. You know what I mean? It's just, it's, I guess your perception and I guess how much of their reality that you see you're exposed to allows you to be able to deal with certain things like that. Because I'm not from here. I was the same way. Dang, my friend making $40,000 a year, 3 cruises every 2 months. What am I doing wrong? But then it's oh, okay.
I'm not worried about other people's pockets, and I don't let people count my pockets. And I've had people ask me, well, how do you get to do this? And I don't like that because I don't worry about other people's situations, it's none of my business. But it's just I have become aware that sometimes if I'm scrolling, I notice and I'm oh, man, I ain't. So I have to pull myself back and be really careful not to let it start infiltrating in my mind. And I feel kind of bad for the younger generation because that's
Yeah.
It's not a microwave situation. I have teenage sons, and I have to remind them, you don't have to get all the expensive shoes just because you see these kids on YouTube who are YouTubers, who are doing like these, like, you know, they're millionaires, you know, unboxing, and I'm like, I have to try to help them see that it's just a facade sometimes, and these people, they might not always be happy. And I don't know, it's just, it goes deeper, and it's a lot of, you know,
It's a lot of
psyche and things that you can dig into a little bit more, but.
I think it's cool to, like, what helps with the social media thing, especially coming out, well, still in the pandemic, coming out or whatever. When I sat still and looked at, like, dang, how much time am I spending on social media? That time is your currency and your value. And you could, as much as you sit, and I find myself as sick, and my brain will go like, let me chill in my downtime. First thing I do, I go to IG, go to this, and then I have to literally train my brain to stop that. Because it doesn't matter if they're happy or sad with love. It doesn't translate to my life and how I spend my time. And your network and who you know, like, that is, like my parents, the one thing they were like, don't talk about money, that's rude. So how would you know if they're happy or not? Like, it's not like I'm gonna see them on social and say like, wow, it looks like you had a lot of money. Where did you buy that? How much did you spend on that? And where did you buy your car? Did you rent it, right? So it's like, it has not, like, when you're on social, make sure you isolate that that's entertainment. I don't watch TV. Social media becomes my, like, break. And once you break that kind of habit, the people don't impact your life, your destiny. As soon as you give that your power, then social media becomes a thing. Like, it takes, like, you could easily scroll on social media for like an hour. I know I can. Hours.
I think one of the things that I've done has been helpful, because I'm similar way, whether it's social media, you go to a cocktail party or friend's house, and oh, did you see the new such and such thing? Yeah, I saw it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, oh, their house is so beautiful. Yeah, you know, but I think for me, you know, working with the nonprofit and keying in a little bit more on like what I think my purpose is, you know what I'm saying, has been really helpful for me, right? So I can kind of say, well, you know, maybe perhaps they may have this thing, that, or whatever, but I believe strongly in what I'm doing over here. You know what I'm saying? I believe strongly in this group of people, you know, that were helping. And I can see the benefits from that, right? I can see. And so I've started to selectively choose how I spend my time. So I spend my time in the neighborhood. I spend my time doing yoga. I spend my time playing. I spend my time doing the things that I enjoy doing. And I spend less time with, you know, my friends or my colleagues or whatever they are. You know what I'm saying? You know, particularly when I got to the point I was like, well, you know, all we ever do when we go over there is talk about the newest this or the newest that, or I have no interest in like any of those things. You know, so I think, you know, maybe isolating yourself a little bit, like you said, isolating yourself and really being, going deeper into yourself and, well, what do I love to do? Right? You know what I'm saying? What do I really, you know, admire? And I think that's one of the strategies I've used.
And that brings it back to some of our earlier points. Is once you identify what your version of wealth looks like, then you can look at these other people who are showing their external riches. You know, they might not even have identified what they ultimately wanted. Like they just going back to the short-term fun versus long-term enjoyment. They might be cool with the short-term fun, the short-term appearance, the short-term what it looks like I'm living my best life. But in 5 years, if they haven't planned for that 5-year picture, have they even identified what a wealthy life looks like to them? And have they, you know, been put in the steps to get there? Because in 5 years come, they're still showing that same version of riches while you're, you know, you've been playing yoga, playing the drums and doing your yoga and getting your mind right, aligning yourself with the goals, finding yourself at the right tables with the right people that are going to support you in the things that you ultimately want to do. 5 years go by and you're actually living your best life truly, and you're like happy from the inside.
That's great.
Yeah. All right, so last reason, number 5, why you might not be able to stick with your budget plans is because you haven't clarified your reasons to stay motivated, to delay gratification, and follow through. I feel like we just talked about all of that. students talk about. So this one is a little tricky because at first thought, you might think to yourself, well, of course I know what my reasons are. I want to experience wealth and financial success. And while you might have a general idea of what that looks like oh, I want to travel more, or I want to buy my mama a house. Like you might have that general idea, but if you haven't visualized exactly what that looks like and put the tactical plan or put the tactical numbers to what that actually means, then when it comes to the brunch at the end of the month, you know, you get that. Oh, my bad. When it comes to the brunch at the end of the month, when it comes to the brunch at the end of the month, you know, instead of like, you know what, I deserve it, because you do deserve those bottomless mimosas. Anybody who likes bottomless mimosas, you do deserve to enjoy your hard-earned money, and so you can make that decision. Yes, you can go enjoy that today for this weekend, or you can also think about, I deserve this, true, but I also deserve to live my best life, and sometimes that might mean I want to travel more next year, so I'm going to stick with my plan today because, well, I deserve those things, but now in front of the future, you know, sometimes you got to pick one. I don't like to live in a world of reality, but at some point you have to, you know, make sure your actions are aligned with, you know, ultimately what you want to do, especially if day to day, sometimes you find yourself with money worry, feeling like you're going against yourself, or, you know, whatever those thoughts are that come in between these times. Just recognizing when they come through, not judging yourself for it, but just making the point to identify it when it comes up next time. If you have that fork in the road per se, to say, okay, here I am with another opportunity. Am I going to, you know, do that thing that I end up regretting later, or am I going to do it different? Just this one time, you know, one time now, and then keep putting those ones together. And another book in the book club that we'll talk about is The Compound Effect, where every action, every decision you make will take you either take you towards your goals or take you a little further away from your goals. Just one action every time. Okay, so that's it for this group discussion. Does anybody have any final shares before we get to the exercise? Pass on some papers.
I'll share real quick. I didn't get a chance to make this really nice question earlier about what we learned from our parents.
Yes.
I'll say, I know some people may look down upon 401ks, but that was the most that my mother knew to share with me was when I first entered the workforce was to put money in the 401k. And for maybe the first 5 years, I didn't because, again, that instant gratification, I wanted to spend all the money that I got. I could not think at the age of 21 of me being 60 and need to pull this money out. I need that far in advance.
Yeah.
But about 5 years ago, about 26 is when I really started to get serious and put money in.
Is that when you had Amber?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yep, 26. And I'm thankful for that advice that she gave me. Our parents tell us and they do the best that they can with what they know. And so my mother definitely, your grandmother definitely did that with
That's
me.
gotta for those that know.
And then here I am at 50 now, and I'm glad that she told me and encouraged me over and over to do that back then. So I just want to share that.
What was the first book that you recommended?
The Psychology of Money.
Yeah.
It came out at the end of quarantine, so it's pretty updated. You even mentioned like being in the pandemic, so cool. So this last part of the workshop is a short exercise. So this question, while I get these papers out, if somebody were to ask you right now, would you be able to clearly describe in detail what your future ideal lifestyle looks like? So what I'm passing out now is an excerpt from the book. It's chapter 5. It's chapter 5, which has a little information, one page, and then the exercise at the end that will be the action steps. And so this, this chapter 5 comes into the piece where we talk about putting in your new program. This is where you start to install your new program. And the North Star vision is what represents that 5-year picture that you want to see your ideal lifestyle to look like. And so we're summing up everything, including planning for fun, planning for what you want that lifestyle to look like. If you read through this first page, this one page of instruction, and then today I would like if you guys would complete steps 1 and 2, and that's just saying if you count it out 5 years from now, imagine yourself in it. Just walk through that exercise, literally picture and visualizing yourself in. And if you were to identify what that ideal lifestyle looks like, ask yourself those questions and fill in those blanks and just describe what that may look like. And so, yeah, if you want, we can take about 10 minutes if y'all are open to it, 10, 15 minutes. Oh, I got kids. And good words. Clipboard. I brought some big ones too. Here you go, I got it.
Thank you.
Pen, pencil, table. All right. French girls.
So I'm gonna give myself a few more days to do this. Do you want me to email it to you?
Well, you can upload it to the members.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we're practicing being vulnerable and engaging with each other, you know, if you're open to it, posting it in the member circle.
Okay.
I think that's all right.
Okay.
And I'll give about 5 more minutes, you know, a few more minutes, and if somebody wants to share today, we're going to put it down on the list here.
All right.
Just because I want to respect the event venue space, does anybody want to share what their 5-year at the
Yeah, so, just answering the questions, right? What's gonna make me happy when I wake up and start every day? Just continue to do what I do now, which is practice. When me and my sons wake up, the first thing we say is thank you, creative universe, waking us up today. We're gonna win the morning to win the day, and then also, you know, be present with the presence, because our presence is a present. And so, actually, Kanye, he said it right. I was like, oh, okay, but like, he still came. And then, you know, like, be present with the presence, because your presence is the presence. That's real. And so, what's my ideal day look like? Honestly, I work in education. I work in elementary school, so I still see myself doing that within the next 10 years because So I'm excited about that. And then just waking up, going for a run, because health is wealth. Always, I'll still be bowling, I'll still be walking up and down Stone Mountain. Again, health is wealth, and just living and being free. And with my career, you know, like also, I am a life insurance agent, so I have my life accidents and health license. So also I enrolled the seniors into Medicare, and that's a big business because at 65 they all get it. And it costs them nothing to enroll, and it costs us nothing to enroll them. And we get paid from the companies like Humana and stuff. So I'm gonna be really good in that business. And yeah, and how much money do I make? I plan to make over $500,000 within 3 years. Because it's like a renewal type business. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I'll share this secret.
Yes.
In 5 years, I'll be 23. I'm gonna just go down a little bit, right? I live in Barcelona. I love the quality of life here, so that's always my dream. I make money, create value in the entertainment / real estate industry. I love spending time by the ocean by myself. I love spending time with my family and enjoying all my free time with them. I love spending time by traveling, and the best part of my life right now is the freedom I have, both financially and just to create my own schedule. I wake up every day with the freedom to make my own decisions and control my own schedule. So I start my mornings at 5:30, work out, meditate, relax before starting my actual day. At 8 o'clock, I overcame my concern of financial well-being. I love to hike, and I travel to different countries looking for new adventures and new places to hike. My sons are successfully pursuing their dreams. I didn't say in college because I just wanted to pursue their heart, their passion, that's important. Gas in the car I drive, I said in the Tesla because that's good for the environment, right? Yeah. And I dedicate my time to orphanages, educating young women, helping them to have the power to believe in themselves. And then lastly, I have multiple investments, a large real estate portfolio because it's a dream of mine, and I make over $1 million a year.
Just curious, did you have one for what's your favorite memory for the past 5 years?
Oh shoot, I skipped that. Oh no, I think I overcame the fear of financial.
Wait, that's the challenge you had.
Oh, a challenge. You know, I couldn't put that.
Did anybody put that one? What's their favorite memory from the last 5 years?
Yeah.
I thought that was also a challenge.
I put honestly I had a deja vu moment. Like there was a young lady who did tarot reading on YouTube. No lie, she did Gemini tarot reading. She was like, "Hey, I did meditation. I saw that she was gonna be on the empty stage, but there was gonna be like I didn't even have to. I was with the magazine. I'm a writer with the magazine, and we went to LA to an award show. And no lie, literally walking on stage where the thing was gonna be and go to like college. So it just like really just solidified like I'm on the path. And then just other like universal moments where again money came out and needed. I didn't worry, I just trusted the process. So that's my best memory in fact, that's my favorite.
I'm a little confused. Because it says in the last 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay,
So you project yourself into the future 5 years,
and then
30,
bring up.
and then if you were looking back from that point,
I mean, I'd like to have a memory of me with my wife and design. You know.
so that would be a vacation.
Yeah, that's right. ATVs and cameras and shit.
All right, so if that's all for the share, I'll just back up and conclude by saying this movement, this organization, this community, this mission is all about having more conversations about money and offering the tools and resources for the people to reach their financial goals. So I started this because of my own experience with money growing up with my single mom. My mom was a single mom, raising 2 kids. So often money was the butt of every reason why we couldn't do something. And so I know those early experiences where I've been drawn to this work, and this is just the beginning, and I appreciate y'all for coming to contribute, because if it wasn't for y'all being vulnerable and open to have these conversations, then we couldn't have the conversation about money if y'all weren't willing to do that. so I appreciate it. And so the Quantum Wealth Theory, this is the first of 3 phases, or the first of 3 books. This book is about the mindset, the habits, and starting to build that foundation for that economic empowerment. And then the next book is, if we summed up all the secrets that the wealthy use to grow their wealth, keep their wealth, transfer their wealth, it's between business and tax strategies, so that they don't pay the taxes that we all pay. That's everyone's number one expense. They minimize the taxes through business and tax strategies. And then it's the insurance planning, and it's having the right entities where when we all die, because inevitably everybody dies, is having the correct entity to where you can pass on the assets that you built over your lifetime properly to the next generation, instead of going to the probate state because you didn't have the trust and a will to say, hey, the state doesn't own it. So that's phase 2 is business and tax. Phase 3 is legacy with the insurance and the transfer strategy. And so that's all I got. Get in order now, ships next week, and stay wealthy. If you want to download the full report for those 12 reasons, we went through 5 reasons today. You can go to quantumwealththeory.com/founders. Like, this is our founders group. So go to /founders and you can get that full 12 reasons. Woo! Yes.
So since 2 and 3, we have that to go in the next 5 years.
Absolutely 5 years, yes. Okay. Yes. I know it took me 2 years from conception to now for this one, but now I have the model, the framework, the next one away.
Are you planning on like having some sort of little schools, particularly like high schools, that have like, you know, this kind of
Absolutely.
conversation with young kids?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Congratulations.
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah, I appreciate it. That's my
Okay.
All right, we get a group shot. Yeah, we'll get a group pic.
But I definitely
You want to do it back there? In front of the book, or are you going to be able to put it up here?
You like that picture better?
Yeah. It has your name. Yes, service. You know what I'm talking about. I know. We're waiting to get a group picture over here.
What did she say again? Where we can find that calendar?
She said we can find it somewhere.
/.
Did I get a? Hold on, I may have taken a picture.
Because it says
Ace Financial.
Quantum Wealth here, I've been there, but I don't know, it says /founders.
She did say that. I missed it. I'm sorry. I have to ask her. I should know this. Oh, there we go.